I feel like, even though I've been doing this for a few years, I'm just scratching the surface of what falconry is, what it means, and what you can do with it. My goal here today is to explain what the basic definition of falconry is, talk about what it's not, explain the birds involved with the sport, and to share a personal story about one of the birds that I have been working with, red-tailed hawks being feline. So, without further ado, let's get started. So, the basic definition of falconry is hunting with trained birds of prey. Birds of prey are the same thing as rafters. Birds of prey are birds that pursue other animals for food. It's a sport that's regulated heavily by the DNR in each state in the United States, and it goes back to ancient times, even into the BC era. I don't have a specific date on that, but they've been doing it for as long as there's been basically history. When somebody figured out, yeah, you use this bird to hunt things, that's how long this has been going on. Now that's the basic definition, but when you ask falconers what falconry is, you're probably going to get a wide variety of different responses because it means so much to different people. I made a collage of various situations I've been in regarding falconry. On the left-hand side, you'll see my husband giving me some affection after I trapped my first red-tailed hawk, a female that I trapped 3 years ago. And then all the way at the end, you'll see my husband and my son letting me enjoy putting my bird back in the giant quote, that's what we call these. This is a storage box that we used to carry our birds in. And just a wide variety of experiences. For me, falconry isn't just about hunting. That is kind of the secondary purpose of the sport. If I want to go and catch game, I'm going to be more efficient with a shotgun when I'm going after rabbits and squirrels with my red-tailed hawk. For me, it's about watching the birds fly, being part of that experience. I'm kind of an introvert, and to be able to go out in the woods after work or on a weekend and just have me and my bird out there and experience and have our little adventure, it's the best feeling. I have had some incredible, crazy highs with the sport and some awful, terrible, and drastic lows. Fortunately, none of my birds have died as a result of these things, but you'll see what I'm talking about and how intense this sport is. I decided a long time ago I didn't want to just read about these adventures, I wanted to participate in them myself, so that's one reason I got into falconry. To explain some of these pictures, I got to explain the blow dryer one. My bird was really wet. You can see in that picture, that was probably the day after, or right when we got home from that picture. It was a really warm winter day. Everything was thawing out, and I didn't want to put my bird away wet, and it was going to get a little freezing at night. With falconry, we're responsible as falconers to make sure our birds are at their peak performance, that they're taken care of, and to make sure that their quality of life is at least as good, if not better, than what they experience in the wild. So with falconry, we can use captive, raised birds, or trapped birds. To start out with falconry, you have to use a trapped bird, and that would be a red-tailed hawk or an American kestrel to start out. Although American kestrels are smaller, they're actually more difficult to work with because their weight is so much more narrow in controlling it. We weigh our birds on at least a daily basis. With American kestrels, we have to do it usually about twice a day. I've only worked with red-tailed hawks like this bird you see on the left-hand side of the slide. But it's been an amazing experience, and it's amazing how different the birds can be within genders, and just from bird to bird, just like a dog has a different personality. Birds have their own personalities as well. We can only trap again first-year birds. In this picture, this is a red-tailed hawk. Her name was Nancy. I've had 2 birds. This is Nancy, my first bird. And if you notice, and looking at her tail feathers, they're different colors. Okay, although she's a red-tailed hawk, the first-year birds do not have that red tail. In the falconry world, we call that a brown bird. No matter what kind of species or genus we're talking about, it seems like all those immature birds, even if their adult versions are going to be slate gray or they're going to have that red tail, the young ones are always going to be that brown, so we call it a brown bird. And she definitely fits in and goes into that category. So you can see her first year feathers on the bottom, they're the brown ones, and then the red ones are coming in. You can see they're different lengths. That's because she's in that molting phase where she's shedding her feathers. With red-tailed hawks, they do that once a year. Every species is a little bit different. Some go through partial molts, but we're not hunting it. As you'll see, it's all green behind her. It's during the summer months. So this would probably be about July of last, well, 2 years ago, when she was going through that molting phase. And you can see different even shades of brown. So it's not just brown changing out to the red feathers. It's different varieties in shade. So I thought that was a good picture. Also with those red-tailed hawks, they start with these bright yellow eyes, and then they navigate to a rich chocolate brown color. So she's in that transition phase. I was actually surprised at how light her eyes remained going into that second season. So that's not always the only way to tell a juvenile apart by looking at their eyes. You gotta look at their tail too. So it's a multitude of factors to determine, and the falconer is responsible when they're trapping to know, hey, is this a second-year bird or a first-year bird? The reason we are only supposed to use those first-year birds is because we don't want to take away from the breeding population. We want to be responsible. With the trapped birds, one advantage to using them is that we can eventually release them to the wild. They won't imprint on us. With Nancy, that's exactly what I did. I released her back. Our trapping season is usually from August through January. That varies by state to state. Some do not have a specific trapping season. You can trap them at any time of the year. Our trapping season actually opens up on Saturday the 21st in Wisconsin, and then we can do it through January 31st. Typical hunting season for falconers is fall through the winter, but again, that varies. We have some falconers who they've got kestrels and they love to go after grasshoppers. Can't do that in winter. So that's one way you can do it. Also, I was a gal who had a Cooper's hawk, and she was doing that this spring well after my bird had started molting. So depending on the species and depending on what your goals are, you can keep hunting. It just depends on how you manage your bird. All right, what I want to do now is talk about the varieties of rafters that we use in the sport. How many of you feel confident in your ability to identify a bird of prey? Raise your hand. Yeah, I getting into falconry, I was clueless, and I'm still learning to know and be able to identify between a picture of a sharp-shinned hawk or a Cooper's hawk. Even the experts struggle with it because there are so many just finicky differences, and even within the species there's a variety, and they're so similar unless you have them sitting side by side in a natural environment. It's incredibly difficult, so don't feel bad if you can't identify these. But this is a broad category, or kind of I'll explain the differences broadly between these groups. So these are different genuses that are used. In general, these are the three most common types of birds that you'll see in falconry. We have the traditional falcon, extinctors in the middle column, and then bluegill on the right. We'll talk about each one of those a little bit better here. So these are the most common falcons that you will see in our area in western Wisconsin. I actually saw the first two here today from a distance, but I saw them. So we have the American kestrel, which is the smallest falcon in North America. We have the merlin, which is slightly larger, sometimes about the same size. And then we've got the peregrine falcon. And usually those aren't residents here. If you get closer to the Mississippi River, they do have some nesting sites. But generally they're passing through, especially in September, they're going to be migrating through. I want to talk a little bit about the advantages of each of these. So the falcons tend to have long wings and compact tails. If you ever see them in flight and you see that sharp wing, that's a good indication. If you know it's a bird of prey and it's got that sharp pointed wing, it might be a falcon. They're usually very fast. They typically eat a lot of birds, at least when we use them for falconry. That's what falconers go after. That is if they're not using the American kestrel to go after grasshoppers. The smaller species, like the kestrels, they also focus on the insects, rodents, and reptiles. So every now and then, if you look out in a farm field and you see a little bird hovering, and then you see it dive, that might be a kestrel going for a mouse or even a frog, or grasshoppers. They're known for their amazing swoop displays. What I mean by a swoop display is their ability to dive. So kestrels, they do that, merlins do that too. That's how they get their animals, and they have these really large feet designed for catching other birds. I once was with another falconer who was training his peregrine falcon, and he let this bird go up and up and up and up, and finally when it came down, it was coming down so fast you could hear it. Just a cool experience. If you ever get the opportunity to go out with somebody or see a falconer, there's just nothing else is going on, you can just hear it cut through the air, just way cool. They're also the fastest animal on the planet. Peregrine falcons are found on every continent in the world except for Antarctica. As far as using them for falconry, the way I've seen it done, and all this whole presentation is based on my personal experiences and my knowledge. Not to say that there's not a whole bunch of other information out there. When I've seen a peregrine falcon hunt, and I've been on those hunts, typically what's done is the falconer will spot some quarry, for example, a small pond of ducks, and then they'll hide. And they'll wait very carefully to make sure those ducks don't get spooked. They'll let their falcon go up, and it'll start to ring and circle higher and higher and higher. And finally, when that falcon is at a pitch that the falconer is comfortable with, he'll go in, rush after the ducks, get them to flush, and then the falcon will come stooping down to try to get one. That's a typical peregrine falcon hunt that I've seen. The next group of birds that we have, also a very common traditional falconer bird, are the extinctors. So in this picture, you can really see the difference, I think, between the sharpshin and the Cooper's hawk. For your little tidbit, sharpshins are really small, Coopers are about crow size, and we got goshawks. So the sharpshins and the Coopers are probably the most debated identity-rich challenge that falconers and bird people have, because you get a picture of one and you're on Facebook or social media and everybody's like, what bird is this? And it's debated, is it a Cooper's, is it a sharpshin? And there's so many overlaps in characteristics. Maybe a Cooper's hawk that is obviously a Cooper's hawk has the characteristics of a sharpshin hawk. For example, sharpshin hawks tend to have parrot-like beaks, bulgy eyes, and substantially smaller. The Cooper's hawk they've got this cap on the back of their head, and you can see the difference in the varying gray on the adults, and their tails tend to taper. You can barely see that on the Cooper's hawk here where they're graduated. It's not a clean-cut tail like a sharpshin has. They kind of stagger a little bit. So that's how a couple ways you can tell the difference. Goshawks are way bigger, not as common. They're the birds of the woods. They sometimes call them the ghost of the woods. If you're ever out in the woods during the day and you see a flash of gray and then something's gone, odds are it could have been one of these goshawks. They are in our area, often migrating through, not as common as they used to be. So with accipiters, what sets them apart from other types of bird use is they have the short legs and long tails. Those characteristics allow them to have super fast flights. Their wing beats are almost twice as fast as a boodio, like a red-tailed hawk. It makes them very difficult to work with sometimes because your reaction has to match theirs. They're highly maneuverable. What I mean by that is their ability to cut corners is phenomenal. You get to see it. They are a bird that is used to hunt game birds, squirrels, and rabbits. They're very versatile. And I put down the band of fragile disposition. I thought that was important for you to know because they are not considered a first-year bird. There's a reason that kestrels and red-tailed hawks are used for first-time falconers, required by law. And that's because accipiters are a little bit more antsy, and their biology, they're just a nervous bird, and they can get sick a little bit more. They can get, they're more predisposed to get conditions like aspergillosis, or what we call asper, where it's a fungus or a mold that gets in the air, and if it gets into the respiratory system, they can get sick and actually die from it. So there's certain vaccinations, precautions falconers can use to make sure that that doesn't happen, but it's a real challenge because if you don't keep a clean mews, which is the area that they live in, and you don't aren't consciously making sure they've got good air circulation, those are things you face with them. Also, unlike males, which can be a lot more forgiving in their temperament, they also tend to get a lot more wild. So most falconers, at least in Wisconsin, they use captive bred goshawks. I only know a handful of falconers who use wild trapped, and that's because if you set them down for a week and leave them alone, they're basically wild again, and you've got to start from square one. And I'll get into the training about it too and explain how you get to work with them. And I will say a typical hunt with accipiter. So usually what they are, they're called hawks of the fist. And what that means is you go out for a hunt, you are carrying them on your fist the entire time. There's no releasing them. Some falconers do this depending on what they're intending on hunting, but a typical like pheasant hunt that I'll describe involves the falconer trudging through the snow with the goshawk on their fist, going until they get a flush. And when they see the bird flush, they instantly let their bird go and then hope that their goshawk catches this pheasant there. If not, it can be a serious tail chase. And if you're in dense vegetation, it's a treat because to watch the bird maneuver around trying to get a pheasant, it's a real insane treat to watch because they're just so fast and fragile. So now we're going to talk about my favorite group, blueos. These are the broad wings of the hawk keeping. These are the tanks. In our area, these are the four most common. We have broad-winged hawk in the upper left-hand corner, red-shouldered hawk, which is more like swamp. They tend to like marshier areas. Rough-legged hawk, which is our Arctic visitor during the winter months. And then we have red-tailed hawk, the best hawk that you can probably in my opinion. All of these are birds that have been experimented with falconry, but by far, red-tailed hawks are the most common bird of this group to use for falconry. So the main characteristics that set blueos apart from other birds of prey are their broad wings. Those broad wings allow them to soar. So if you're outside and you look up, and as long as it's not like a vulture, which kind of teeter-tots on the wind, it's probably a blueo, just circling. I mean, obviously, eagles do that too, but they tend to be what we call flying 2x4s. They're very flat. Blueos have a little bit of a dihedral, a little bit of a curve to them, and they tend to circle, and you see a little bit more of a color pattern variation underneath. They use high perches to stalk their prey. They need that height advantage, and they use gravity to catch their prey. So if you're going down Highway 12 out of town, and you look up and you see what you suspect is a bird of prey without a white head, and it's not obviously an eagle, odds are it's probably one of these blueos. Right now, your odds of seeing a bird on top and probably making a red-tailed hawk. As we start to get to October, going into the winter months, it could be a rough-legged hawk. Obviously, there could be any number of birds of prey that you see. I saw an osprey today on a pole. I saw a little kestrel on a pole, so just because you see something on a pole doesn't mean it's a blueo, but that's a huge characteristic. They like to hunt from that height. They're very opportunistic hunters. What I mean by that is they will go after anything they think they can get. I'm not saying your dog or cat's in danger. In fact, I know a lot of my bird here, which I'm going to show you in a little bit, does not like cats at all. They know that they are dangerous. They've got sharp claws and teeth, and there's not anything to mess around with. So most, unless it's a young bird, a raptor probably isn't going to mess with a cat. And they're often seen soaring, as I talked about. When I say opportunistic hunters, I mean I've seen them go after everything from, mice. Man, my first girl, she loved mice, but I've seen them also go after turkeys. So they will go after whatever they can. There are other raptors used too. There's eagles and owls. Everybody loves owls, right? I mean, they're cute. They got those big eyes, but honestly, not a great falconry companion. I did watch a presentation by a couple that did experiment with a great horned owl, and they talked about the pros and cons of doing it. It was an amazing experience, they said, but it took a lot of work to get the owl to do what they wanted them to do. For example, once they were able to catch a rabbit with it, it did not want to let go of that rabbit. They basically had to take the rabbit and the owl and put it in its muse for like a week while it finished up because it did not want to separate it all. There was just no getting it away from it. Also, a lot of people think they're kind of a dumber bird when you try to train them, but when it comes down to it, they don't function the same way as other raptors. Raptors are very visual. They can see, at least red-tailed hawks can see mice from like a quarter of a mile away. I'm sure the eyesight of a great owl is excellent, but they also use a lot of auditory cues. So there's a lot of distractions and things and more sensitivities than we have that we can't appreciate. So when they're acting dumb, it's not being dumb, it's just being differently sensory oriented. And then we have eagles. Eagles are amazing, but in order to be a falconer who uses eagles, you have to be a master falconer. So there's 3 different grades. We have apprentices, generals, and master falconers. I'm a general falconer because I passed my apprenticeship of 2 years. And then I have to be a general falconer for a few more years. But even if you're a master falconer, you still need, at least in the state of Wisconsin, 2 letters of recommendation showing that you've worked with eagles. And on top of that, you've got to consider the practicality of working with eagles. They need wide space, and it's a lot more food, and they're a little bit more dangerous. So you've got to be able to meet those housing requirements. It's just a challenge that isn't really worth it for a lot of people. Last time I checked, this was a couple years ago, and I know things are changing now because they've opened up a golden eagle take, especially out in the western states. There were only about 5 to 10 eagle falconers in the entire country. Just to put that in perspective, as opposed to about 4,000 falconers in the United States altogether. In Wisconsin, we have about 100 practicing and licensed falconers. So now I want to talk about trapping. This is a bird that I trapped. Notice, do you guys think this is a juvenile or an adult red tail? By looking at its eyes.
Juvenile.
Juvenile.
Let's say.
Okay, we got 2 different opinions. Why do you think it's juvenile?
It just looks like a baby. It looks like a baby face. A little baby bird.
You're correct. That dark chocolate brown is one indication that this is an adult bird. Now, I know it's not in the picture, but if you looked at the tail, it was also very bright red. So I let this bird go as soon as I trapped it last year. We have a few different methods of trapping birds of prey. We have a dugaza. A dugaza net is almost like a mist net. The birds can't see it, and traditionally it's used in a cliff or in a wide open field, and then there's like a lured pigeon on the other side who's safely harnessed. The falconer will hide behind a blind with a string, kind of letting the bird flap up, hoping once they spot a bird, a raptor in the distance, that it will come in. And it's amazing how far away they seem and how quickly they can make up that distance. I've been up to the North Shore with dugaza nets, and it's just amazing to see, like, oh, that's too far away, they can't see it. And what seems like a half mile away, they just come in. It's amazing, right on the cliffs. And so what will happen is they'll come in, they're so focused on that pigeon that they do not see any indication about this net, and they'll hit that net and get caught. So then the falconer will come up from behind their blind, and then get the bird and take a look at it. Is it one they want to use, or is it one they want to release? More often than not, it ends up being one that they release. We then have belchatries. We call those BCs for short. Belchatries are what are traditionally used to catch red-tailed hawks. That's what I use. A belchatry is basically a cage with monofilament nooses on the outside. And we have a little sparrow, a little bird, or maybe a gerbil or a mouse on the inside. And what we do is we spot the red tail from a distance on the pole. We say, oh yeah, I think, yeah, that's a red tail. I'm not sure if it's an IMI or not, maybe meaning immature, or if it's a hag, meaning haggard, meaning an adult. But we're going to try it, so because we get all excited. So usually you'll have another person with you who's driving, and if you're the falconer, you'll have the trap sitting on your lap. You'll kind of drive up, and without stopping the car, it's a real challenge, you lower the window or you open the door, kind of shimmy the trap out to the side, usually about this big, and you keep driving. And then you turn around, grab your binos, and you watch, hoping and praying that this bird is going to come down and hit your BC. More often than not, it depends, you know, is the bird hungry? Does it see something that looks kind of spooky? Maybe it's shiny and it's kind of creeping out a little bit, maybe there's too much traffic going on. But if everything works out in the falconer's favor, the bird will come down, start footing at that trap, and get its toes or its foot caught in those nooses. If that happens, the people in the car rejoice. They drive up as fast as they can because they don't want any harm to come to that bird. They'll get out, and then the bird will do this. They flare their arms and stick out their tongue, and they freeze. That doesn't mean they're not dangerous. Their feet are super, super strong. That's why we use these falconry gloves. My understanding is, and I could be way off base on this, but the last time I checked, I think the pressure on a red-tailed hawk is about 550 square pound, or I forget, but it's super strong. Their beak, not that strong at all. My parrot has a stronger beak than this red-tailed hawk does, but their feet, that's where the pressure is. We can use harnesses as well, where you can put like another animal in it and have that covered in nooses, but that's not very common. And again, we can only use those first-year birds. What I want to do is show you a video of me releasing one of the birds I caught last year. He was a small tiercel. Tiercels are males, and they call them a tiercel because they're usually a tier down in size from the females. So this is a little male. He's really small in my opinion. This is the first passive bird I'd ever tracked by myself, and my husband's videotaping.
It's okay.
This is right in
See you later,
Falconry.
buddy.
That's actually Highway 12. But it was on the side of the road, and I looked up at the pole and I'm like, oh my goodness, we had actually...
Self-trap hop. Precision.
He doesn't have any character at all. All right, so that's my husband there, and he's a real sport. And my son was actually with us. I think he was only about 5 months old at the time. Let's see here. Okay. So again, that's hunting with a hawk. And what we did before we released them, because while we were in a better condition, we sprayed them for flat flies. Flat flies are this really bad nuisance fly that crawls in their feathers and it's just gross and sucks their blood and can be parasitic. Most wild birds have them, but if they get malnourished, they can start to become a problem. Usually you can gauge the quality of the bird's life by how many flat flies it has on it. So we have different training methods. When we train raptors, they're all a little different depending on what species you work with. For example, I worked with red-tailed hawks, but goshawks are very similar to this, castors are very similar to this. They all follow the same principles. The main point of what we do is we use operant conditioning. That is a positive way to reward the bird to do what we want them to do. So whenever they take an action that we like, they get a treat for it. For example, if they hop to my fist when I want them to, they get a treat, and then we do it again, and then they hop back, and then we'll increase the distance. We try to end on a high note every time we do that. We never punish a bird. The bird, you just can't. They're not a social creature like humans are, where they understand discipline. They are very independent, and if you try to correct them and tell them no or hit them, it's counterproductive. I've never done it, but everything I've ever read has said operant conditioning is the only way to train a bird. It's only with positive reinforcement. Darkness is your friend. What I mean by that is we start in a dark room. Let's say I catch that bird that we just tracked. If I caught that bird and after spraying it down, I would have hooded it, kept it calm, and I would have let it sit for a night. I would have then come in the dark the next day, and with a small flashlight, probably in my mouth because my hands are full, I would have had my bird on my glove, and I would have had a little piece of meat. And I would have probably started going squeaking like a mouse just to make the association that this is food, this is good. I would have warmed up the meat, made it nice and juicy, but he can't see me. The flashlight in my mouth is focused on that little bit of meat, and I'm just hoping that the bird will bend over or take a bite. I might even lift the meat to try to get the bird to take a bite. If they bend over, hallelujah, we've got progress. If not, we try it again the next day. That's the whole goal, is to get them. With my first bird, it took almost a week for her to want to bend over. Their metabolism isn't like yours and mine. They can go a couple days without eating alive. And she was just that stubborn and that food driven, as opposed to this bird went much faster, and you'll hear that story. As the bird starts to get comfortable with us in the darkness, I slowly increase the light, and the bird will start to eventually see me. Eventually, he'll eat in front of me in full daylight. Then what I end up doing is like, okay, you're eating in full daylight, let's have you work for it a little bit. I'm going to make you step onto my glove. And then the next day, I'm going to have you hop onto my glove. And then we double the distance each day until we get up to about 50 yards with a red-tailed hawk. Some folks say 100 yards. I never did that with him. It was super windy for a couple days last fall, and I just couldn't risk it to 100 yards. Not to mention, it's hard to find an area that has 100 yards of public land that you can safely creance your bird and get them to come to you without the chance of them bugging out. Let's say they see something, or maybe they get scared. They might try to go into a different direction, and they're going to get hung up on something. So as a falconer, we're always looking out for the safety of our bird. Is there a power line in the way that they're going to get hung up on, get electrocuted? Is there a dog, or maybe a group of people? We got to take all those things into consideration for their own safety. We practice ways to call back, again, to the glove. We incorporate what we call a padded board. It's a way to separate us from the bird, so that if for whatever reason they're having a bad day, maybe they're sick, maybe they're like, you know what, I don't want to come down to that falconer. They can come to this lure with meat, where it's usually considered like a jackpot. We train them to think like, hey, every time you come to this, it's either the end of the day or you're going to get food no matter what. And then we've got other lures as last resort. Let's say I'm out hunting and he won't come down to my glove or a padded board. I might try something else. I've heard crazy stories of falconers who were out and about and their bird just started soaring and they waved, like they took off their white t-shirt and they started waving it back and forth. And crazy enough, it worked and the bird saw it and it came down from God knows how many hundreds of feet. And then once we've done that crayons training, we free fly and then we hunt. This whole process can take anywhere from a couple weeks to a month or more, depending on the bird that you're working with and how far they're progressing. It's amazing to see the difference between my first bird and my second bird. I want to show you a video now of some of the crayons training we did over at Memorial Field, just a few blocks behind us. And forgive the quality, it's a bit pixelated. But this is Eli. He's on a perch. And he's on, you see a leash that he's on. It's just clipped to some jesses, which are basically anklets on the bottom of his feet. And I'm whistling, so he associates, every time he takes a bite, he associates that whistle with the meat, kind of like that Pavlov's dogs. So I could walk back and have him go on the perch, but I think at this point he had done a couple days worth of doubling the distance, where I thought he can fly back and get the hang of it himself. You hear that jingling, those are bells on his anklets when I hunt, and especially with a new bird, I've got bells on them. It's just a way to, so like if he gets lost, or he happens to break free from the crayons, I can hear where he is. He also has a transmitter on his tail, so that if he did happen to bug out, something crazy happens, I can track him down using that transmitter in the back of my bag. I never had to do that, but when I'm ever out with my bird, I always think, okay, what is the worst case scenario that can happen, and how am I prepared to handle it? And he progressed phenomenally. Did a little shake of the tail feather. I think that's about enough there. You guys get the idea. I'll do this one more time. I like watching. All right. Yeah, he just kept at it. He was good. So if everything goes well and the training is good, you hunt. And when you hunt, some days you have good days like this, where you get the bag limit. In Wisconsin, we're allowed 3 rabbits a day. That is highly unusual, at least in my experience. Every season I've had, we've gotten 2 what we call hat tricks, where you get 3 rabbits in a day. That is a great day, and I was really proud of this moment. Keep this in a very short period of time, too, I think about 2 hours. That is unusual, very unusual. To put that in perspective, that's with me going out maybe 100 times hunting during the year, and it's happened just twice. Probably over 100 times, because I hunt 4 days a week. So the question is, what do we do with all of that? You know, this isn't just about the rabbits, it's about what we do with it. So we try to use as much as we can off the animal. I take off as much meat as I can for myself. And then whatever's left over, like the rib meat, I mean, that's kind of tricky to get it through. I save that for Eli, and we alternate that. So he has a very, very diet, rabbit, mice, quail. This is what we do. We raise the rabbit. We made some beautiful grilled food. I have rabbit soup, actually. We had that last week for one of my lunch dinners. And rabbit pot pie. That's my attempt at a rabbit sketch. We use it. We use it all, and then he gets it. And the cool thing about rafters is that they can digest most everything on an animal. You'll see them like swallow and pull as fast as they can. Owls, you know, they cast out pellets, or maybe you just sent them in high school. consists of bones, fur, and feathers. With hawks and eagles, they can actually digest all of those bones. That's where they get all their calcium from. So when they cast, just like an owl every morning, it's only just the fur and the feathers that are left over. They take all the bones and digest it. So what does it take to become a falconer? So I put down the minimum requirements. And this is just for Wisconsin, but this is pretty similar to other states. You have to be at least 14 years old. You have to pass a written exam with DNR. That exam covers a variety of topics, such as the biology of the bird, safety of the bird, facilities. It covers literature, common literature that's involved, and then also some legal questions. If you pass that, then you can build your facilities and pass a facilities inspection by the DNR. They'll come out to your house and make sure that you have a proper weathering area and views, or what we call free loft, that will be a good place for your work. In this case, this is my husband. He's real sassy. I can't give him enough credit for helping me with the sport. I am doing everything with my bird, but he's behind the scenes building me everything I asked him to do. So what he's doing here is he was refashioning our pre-season porch in the back of our house, which is that free loft. The timber you see in front of him, that eventually was the wall he put floor glass on, and some other sheeting on the other side to trap our bird in there. And then the other side was the pre-season porch was a safety chamber, and then the next room is our laundry room. So that's how we do it. And then you've got the bars on the windows so they can't stick their heads through and hit the glass if we decide to put the glass in there. And then we put perches up. So that's a demonstration of our free loft. In addition to being 14 years old, having a written exam, facilities inspection, you have to find another general or master falconer who's willing to sponsor you for 2 years. What they do is they're the go-to person if you have any problems or questions. And I can't tell you how helpful my falconer sponsor was during that whole process. I put down, most importantly, that it takes determination. And this is where in the presentation it's going to get a little bit more real and raw. And so I just want to mentally prepare you guys for that. So when I say determination, and this is a sport of highs and lows, it is that. For every time you have a great experience, there are some serious challenges. And I'm going to give you 3 examples. One of them involves personal challenges. One of them involves a challenge that my bird had. And one of them is just a collage of a variety of experiences we've had to overcome to succeed in the field. So the first one is when I got hit in the face by my red-tail. We were out hunting north of town, and everything was going fine, but hadn't seen any game. And I think my bird was getting bored. She was very aggressive. And even on our first hunt, when I got my first rabbit, I came home with blood coming down my face because she hit the back of my head, associating me with food. She was just and the female red tails tend to be like that, very aggressive. But it was almost like she was imprinted on me because maybe I caught her at a younger age, I'm not sure. Regardless, this was the next year. And I was out and I had just given her a big chunk of meat on my fist. And that was the first, I think we hadn't seen any rabbits, no sign. And 5 minutes later, I heard bells behind me. Knowing that she was predisposed to kind of hit me in the back of my head a handful of times ever, I always had a habit of turning around to see what was going on. Maybe the bells were ringing, not because she was going after me, but maybe because she saw game and I wanted to see, hey, is she going down on something? And I keep my eye on my bird, I'm more quickly able to handle the situation. As soon as I turned my head, I felt a sudden rush of pain in my cheek. I spent the next 2 minutes prying her off of this side of my face, putting her on the ground. I grabbed her with my right hand, and I just kind of assessed the situation, like, okay, what now? And just being grateful I still had my eye. And then I decided, okay, I know how I'm going to handle this. I didn't reward her for that experience. I let go of her, because that's not positive reinforcement, is it? If you're a bird, you don't want to be held upside down by your legs. And we continued hunting for about 10 or 15 minutes. I wanted to not tell her that, hey, every time you hit me, you get to go home, or we get to be done. No, we're going to keep on hunting. So with blood kind of trickling down my face, and you try to keep up with that, they're super visual birds. I tried to keep up with her, and finally I decided, okay, we're close enough to the car. I called her down. Didn't give her a whole lot, because again, I don't want to super reward her, but I had to get my bird back. And then I loaded her up. Went home, cleaned up my face, still had the scarf on. 2 days later, we got this rabbit. I could have easily said, you know what, this sport's not for me. But if you're a falconer, I knew going into it that things like this can happen. I reassessed the situation and I realized it wasn't a problem with my bird, it was my training method. I stopped calling her to my fist and I only used the lure after talking with a few falconers. So then she wasn't associating the food with me. I was using a separate method. So when we have struggles like this with our birds, it's usually not the bird, it's the falconer. You have to think past the issue and find how can I train differently and be correct in the situation. The next issue I want to present is one with my bird, a physical ailment. I was out hunting with her one December. It was actually a month after that happened, and she was amazing. She had gotten real good at going after squirrels, and she kept missing squirrel after squirrel after squirrel. And I'm like, why is she missing these? Finally, she got one, and I was really excited. 2 days later, I'm looking down at her feet, and I noticed that she's not moving her smallest toe on the left foot. And I'm like, that's not good. No signs of pain. Raptors are so stoic, and that's why it's incumbent upon the falconer to be paying attention to every detail. They do not show signs of pain unless it's super bad. So again, he wasn't moving, and I'm like, oh, that's not good. Call the Raptor Center. It's a veterinary clinic in the cities that specializes in birds of prey. And they did an evaluation, and they determined, you know what, she's got a lot of squirrel bites that we can heal first before we can deal with that toe. So they bandaged her up. She was under anesthesia there. They ended up amputating that toe. So that's her in this picture here. If you look, there's a little bandage on that toe on her left foot. But even with that, even without that little toe, she still went out and hunted. It took about 1.5 to 2 months, and she went and she got that squirrel among a bunch of others. Amazing work. Amazing work. And then we talk about other challenges. Some of those challenges are personal, some of them are weather related. The bulk of them seem to be weather related. This is not a fair weather sport. We go out when it's 10 below, we go out when it's raining, we go out when it's snowing, and we go through the thickest stuff with cattails. In this picture here, she had done like one of those castor moves where she, from, I don't know, 50 feet up on this huge light pole, saw something in this pond of cattails in the winter, hovered over, and then did one of those Falcon scoops straight down. It was just one of the coolest things. So then I had to walk out there and try to find her. And this is one of the pictures. This was a picture down here where it was about 10 below. This last one with Eli. And this is one where I was just pregnant. You know, sometimes you're sick, you're not feeling great. You get out there and you hunt with your bird. On that note, I want to show you a video. It was the last hunt I had with Nancy before I ended up releasing her. I call it Nancy's last work call. We had just caught a rabbit. We had worked hard for that rabbit all day. It was a warm February day. I like to hunt until the end of February because her hormone starts to get all worked up. And she's flying a little bit there. She knows what's coming. She knows she had a good one, and she knows my movements. Just like other animals and her pets. They know what's normal. So I'm calling her to the Lord, and she just landed. I'm making it easy on her. It's buffet night. Buffet night is where I crop them up. I give them as much as they can possibly eat until they can't eat anymore. Can't do that every night because you can't. If you ate everything all the time, you wouldn't want to hunt, right? I think about like being an athlete. They have to be healthy in order to hunt. But if they're too fat, they have no incentive and they can actually have health problems. So it's finding that balance, and that's your goal of falconer. Oh yeah, I'm like 8 months pregnant in this thing. Another reason I decided to release her was just time. She's reaching sexual maturity. I was bringing another person into the world. She was getting really aggressive, and she'd actually latched onto another person when we were out in the field. And I'm like, you know what? It's just time. It's just time. It's the right time for her and for me. So she just eats, and when they crop up, they get this big bulge on the front of the mouth. If you ever see a bird like that, it's probably not a goiter or something. It just means they have a really good meal. And so this was it. Oh, and about that. I wasn't sure how long this one was going to be because I was there for, it felt like 10 minutes while she just ate, and I was trying not to cry because it was the last time I was going to be with my first bird. All right, so now what I want to do is talk about Eli's story. I'll try to make this quick. I know it's about 6:50 right now. Eli is an amazing bird. In contrast to Nancy, he was not very healthy when I tracked him. This is a picture taken by Todd Johnson, some of you may know. He started out really kind of sick. It happened, I was out for a run, and a physical run with my son. He was about 4 months old at the time. 5 months, he was 5 months. And I came back to the house after that run, and my husband had all the water shut off in the house, so I couldn't clean the baby, I couldn't get cleaned up for my run, I couldn't get water ready. I was like, no, it's screwed, I'm gonna go and try to trap dog. So I hopped to my car, and I knew it was I only had so much time, the little one had to go to bed, so I drove to Stinson Road. I live right here in Augusta. And Stinson Road is just on the other side of the bypass, not a bypass, but that little ramp next to the high school on Highway 12. And I kind of followed the industrial parks. I'd seen some red tails up there along the tracks, hoping I'd see nothing. So I figured, okay, I'm going to go as far as County Road R and turn around. And for the first time, I saw a bird on a pole that I hadn't noticed before on Stinson Road. So I'm like, oh my goodness. So with Silas, my son, sleeping in the back, I deployed the trap by myself, crested the hill on the other side of Stinson Road, turned back around, my adrenaline's just pumping, and I kind of grabbed my binoculars and I looked. I didn't see anything, so I thought maybe the bird had bugged out. I drove past, and it was still on the pole, it just wasn't a blind spot. So I drove past to R, turned back around again, and I was on the corner of Highway 12 and Stinson Road, and I parked, and as soon as I parked to kind of glass, I saw him go down. So I'm like, oh my goodness, here we go. I saw him put in the trap, and it doesn't always work, they don't always get caught. But I saw all of a sudden he pulled and the cage moved with him. He did that a couple times, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I think he's caught. So I drove up, my son's still sleeping, and I pull up alongside, and I look, and the first thing I see are those bright yellow eyes. Got a glimpse of his tail, I'm like, that is an immature bird. I'm so excited that I made a mistake and I turned off my car. Instantly, my son wakes up as I jump out of my car to try to wrangle this bird by myself. I struggled with masking tape. If you ever get to Falconry, do not use masking tape. Before I decided this wasn't worth it, I used painter's tape to kind of wrap his toes to protect him. And then I put a hood on him, wrapped him up into a stocking cap, and I took him home. When I got home, my husband was ready, and I said, I think I found a bird I want to keep. I was looking at him, and he looked like he was in good feather condition. I didn't see any signs of illness on him, like he would have crowns, which is like this bacterial thing that can grow in your mouth. But what we noticed, and what I screwed up, and this is where I'm learning, is I should have sprayed him for bugs in the field. We sprayed him inside the house, and I kid you not, like 20 of these flat flies started pouring off. So I was just starting to settle down. We had him in a swing. You can see him back there, kind of a little bit in the swing. But we finally got anklets on him, we got him just up, we got him calmed down. And by that time, it was going on at 8 o'clock. It was a rough night, but it worked. I put him away, like I described to you guys as far as the training method, and I came back to him the next day to try to feed him. Initially, instantly when I noticed when I tried to feed him, he started closing his eyes. That's not a good sign for a bird. They don't usually do that, they're usually bright, alert. What he did, and when I saw that, I turned on the lights, and he just stood there and looked at me. When I did that with Nancy, to put that in perspective, she flared, she put out her tongue. He didn't show like he was afraid of me at all. So I'm like, there is something wrong with this bird. He is not acting scared. So I called my old sponsor right away, shared with him the situation. I'm like, I'm scared my bird's not gonna make it. And I could release him back. I didn't have any obligation to keep him. But after so many days, you have to ban him and keep him. And you keep him in captivity for so long. So he came out, he looked at her and said, oh, he looks good. But I noticed a few days later, she kept doing this. And what I noticed after that first day, she had this casting. That's like the owl pellets. Grasshopper exoskeletons. Red-tailed hawks are not known for eating grasshoppers. That's how bad he was doing in the wild. My assessment of the situation was that he was too low in weight. He was sick. They say that about 80% or up to 80% of red-tailed hawks die in the wild their first year. It's another reason they want you to use first-year birds. You're giving them that second chance. At this point in my career, I'm very confident he would have died if I didn't trap him. He was shutting his eyes, and he was living like this. Not a good sign at all. I actually ended up putting weight on him. A lot of times with falconers, you can drop them by up to 10% of their body weight. With him, he started out at 940 grams. I was hunting with him at almost 100 grams over that weight for him to be healthy. He was too low. So I had to beef him up and So then we started the manning process. That means introducing him to people, getting him used to people. Once he was good inside, I took him outdoors, started him in the dark, and then brought him into the light. And then we did a free flight. And I want to show you a slow-mo video of that free flight. That was day 15 that we started doing that free flight. This is his first free flight. He had done it a couple times, so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be a little sassy pants here, and I'm going to do this one-handed and have you come to my glove. That was me whistling. That's the whistle in slow-mo. So then that was day 15. 2 days later, we caught our first rabbit. So it only took a little over 2 weeks to get him from that scared, trapped bird all the way to a bird that trusted me. That's how quickly things can go. My sponsor said that if he ever watches this video, he's not going to be too thrilled I mentioned this, that his bird, the best he ever did was 21 days. So that's how fast things can progress. Things progress based on your comfort level, your level of risk-taking, your assessment of the situation. I could not have done this with Nancy in 17 days. A lot of that was because I was a newbie, but because she was progressing way slower. So every bird is different. You just have to feel them out and go with their progression. If you go too slow, they can become like a fist clinging where they don't want to leave your glove, and you don't want that. You want it to be a confident bird. So then we had all these situations where he was successful throughout the last season. He caught a squirrel, but most of them were rabbits. He actually caught this snake right near the Lions field, and that was in December. That was pretty close to Christmas, a snake in December. I think it was about 36 degrees that day. It must have been a warm hill or something, but I couldn't believe that. That was last year. And then there was another hat trick that we got, 3 rabbits. And I was posing because I was really excited. I think I've got one more video here, and I'm almost done. Yeah, what I wanted to show you was Eli vocalizing. That's a red tail cry.
2 owls, probably great horns. This is the first time I've ever heard him make the red tail cry. He's only a little bit territorial.
I don't want to talk about it, it's not as important. I'll put that in perspective. What had happened is, he came over to this area, and he had never vocalized. Very quiet bird. And all of a sudden, you hear a red tail cry. I'm like, oh my goodness, it's a wild bird coming in to attack him. That happens sometimes. You'll have him like fisticuffing it out, a wild bird and your bird. What had happened was, and I didn't realize, I'm like, he is just not coming down. I don't know what's going on. I looked and I saw an owl fly by in the woods. And then I saw a second one. He was being territorial. And I was like, oh my goodness, and this is in Eau Claire. So, I mean, the stuff you don't think is there, I mean, Eau Claire is a wild place, guys. But that was the only time, I think 1 or 2 occasions I heard him vocalize. The second time I'd ever heard him do it, I don't know what he saw because I couldn't make it out. But I moved to a different location because it wasn't worth it. What I want to do now is show you guys Eli. Do you want to see him? He hasn't had dinner yet, so he needs to eat. I will preface this by saying, and if somebody wants to hit the lights, and I will answer any questions as we talk about this now, but I know it's about 7 o'clock now. He is a wild bird. He's going through that molting period right now, where he is fat and sassy, and I'm trying to keep his life as de-stressed as possible. What will happen is when a bird is going through the molting process, if they get stressed or if they're not eating enough, they can develop what they call fret marks on their feathers. They're weak points, so that if they hit them too hard, they can break at those points. So that's what we're trying to prevent. He's going to be just fine. But every now and then they do this thing called baiting. That's where they try to fly off their fist. Incredibly normal. If he does that, don't worry, I have control of him, and he will regain the fist. But this is a new situation. He's not used to being around this many people, and the acoustics in here and the lighting. He might see some high areas where it's like, hey, that would make a great perch and try to fly to it. Very normal. So if you see that, that's normal. But I'm going to feed him. And you guys get to see them up close and personal.
You might even take a picture or something like that, or you probably didn't.
You can definitely take as many pictures as you want. They're videotaped, they're going to put it on YouTube, so you might as well take as many photos as you like. So this is a giant hood, and he has a little hood, or what we just call a regular hood, on his hood right now. It's probably just starting to settle in here too. So, kind of like horse blinders, he's got this hood on him to keep him calm. Because again, they're very visual. This is Eli. This is half a quail that I prepared at home. Not warmed up because of what we're doing here today. But this will keep the focus on something positive as opposed to potential stressors in the audience. If you guys have any questions right now, feel free as you watch me. Anybody have any questions about the presentation so far or something I just did not cover? I could talk about this forever. Go ahead.
So what's like the difference in mentality, like raising a hawk versus raising a pet? Because they're not like, you know, like a pet that you would have. I don't think
That is a great point. He is definitely not a pet. Sometimes I have people come up and they say, you know, can I pet him? They're not affectionate. So I talked before about how they're not social creatures. They don't like to hug. There is this, you know, on Facebook and social media, you'll often see videos of people doing cute things with owls or hawks. If you look carefully, you'll often see that those are very staged situations. They have a psychological thing called anthropomorphism. It's the tendency of humans wanting to humanize everything else, including animals. What I bring that up for is sometimes you'll see, I saw this article of a veterinarian taking care of a hawk. It looks like the hawk is hugging the vet. I highly doubt that that was a situation. I once took a picture where I was out and everybody in the picture is smiling. It's me, my husband, with Silas, my son, strapped to his front, and two other people in the back, and even Eli looked like he was smiling. Well, unlike people, they don't have sweat glands, so they pant through their mouth. It was November, the temperatures were in the 70s, and he wasn't used to the heat. I took advantage of the fact that he just baited and was getting over his exertion from trying to leave my fist, and him panting, it just happened to look like he was smiling. So people loved that picture, but in reality, that's not what was going on. So when you see like a dog that kind of cowers or does anything like that, birds do not do that at all. I will tell you that they are a very honest animal. If you are a cocky person working with a hawk, they will set you straight real quick. They will make you honest because there's no fooling a raptor. And again, he's going to eat this all. And if he can't get it, he'll spit it out and he'll try it again. So you're going to kind of go,
How long does it take to get him comfortable with the hood? Or what's his reaction when you first put it on him?
Sure, good question. They're usually really stoic when you first trap them, meaning they let you do a whole lot because they're kind of frozen. They're afraid to move. Picture yourself, and this is how you have to look at it, is from their world. They've never been this close to a human before. This is all new, so they're frozen. They're like, I'm afraid to move. What will happen? Am I going to get hurt? They're super scared. So we take advantage of that stoic state by introducing the hood, keep doing it over and over. And as we do that, they realize that it's not a scary thing. It's not painful. It's just weird. And it can often feel really heavy on their head, so you'll see them like sink their head initially, but as they get used to that weight, like something being on their head that they've never had before, they accept it into their world. And by no means do you have to have a hood with a red tail, because it's value in school. I think of when I had to go to vet with Nancy, I didn't put her a whole lot my first year when I molted her in the summer months, I thought if I did it, 10 times during that summer, it'd be plenty. I lost my ability to play with her. So when I went to the vet, it made things difficult. When they want to anesthetize her, for example. I had to go to the cities a couple times to work with her. I worked with the osteo vet. There was a vet there who didn't know anything about raptors, but was so great and willing to learn. And so with their collaboration with one another, I was able to get her back to health. But yeah, it's just a tool. Another tool in the falconer's pocket. And if you watch, he eats enough here. You'll see that crop start to build up and get bigger. It's kind of what I want. And that's okay. I will clean this up. I brought Windex and paper towels. Any other questions?
Are you told that they'll hunt chickens or hens?
They're very opportunistic. They can do that, and they will do that. I often hear complaints. I had a relative call me up one day and said, Susan, I've got a hawk hanging around my bird feeder. If you don't come out and take him, I'm going to kill it. I'm like, well, first, that's a violation of the Migratory Bird Act. Secondly, if you simply take down, and I got one for you. This is where you got to be careful because they can be footy. This is where you can look around. But I trust my bird. This is about knowing your bird. This is sometimes a big no-no to reach. And this is a piece of rabbit, actually, from last year that we caught. So the first part I gave was quail, and this is a spinal rabbit. He'll probably pick at us for a little bit. He's feeling it. And you see him move his head like this. He's just working that food down from his crop into his stomach. The crop is just a temporary area for him to hold. I'm sorry, I get super sidetracked. They can go after chickens. So my point was with my story about this relative. I told him if he took his bird feeders down, the hawk would eventually go away. And that's because, and thank you guys for coming. You have a wonderful evening. When you put out a bird feeder, you're creating an unnatural concentration of prey for these hawks. They're doing what they do. And they say like, hey, there's a buffet here. I want it. Well, that's what's going to happen. So I told him that's the easiest way to do it. I think at the time, he had called me, it was during the summer months, and it was likely a Cooper's or a sharpshin hawk. Red tails normally don't go for other birds. My first bird did go for other birds. This guy hasn't. So they're opportunistic. My first bird went for a turkey. That will probably never happen again. It took advantage of deep snow, the fact that this turkey was isolated, and probably this turkey not being in the best of health. So it sat up in a tree for a little bit, and I didn't think it would. And she just went down toward the tree line. And I'm like, oh, we got some game. Maybe it saw a rabbit or a squirrel. And then I'm like, okay, not a squirrel, because it went down for the ground. Unless the squirrel went for the ground. Then I realized, oh man, it's going for the turkey. So it was just the right set of circumstances. They can go for chickens, especially if they're clipped. And they've had success in them before. They tend to be creatures of habit. I once went up and down Highway 12, I think this was the fall of last year, and I saw a hawk, had to have been a male, and he was on the power lines. Usually they like the poles, but he liked the power lines. And every day I would get home from work, and he was always on that same power line. He must have had success right there, and every night he'd come back to that same spot. So they can, and they will take advantage. Some of them have gone after cats, but that's extremely rare too. They usually don't have to worry about your pets. And again, they will go after birds, but he's typically a rodent guy. Usually birds are too fast for him. But chickens, they're slow enough, or they're hanging out, or they're in an isolated area, could take advantage of the situation, especially if they're super hungry. But usually they want to stay away from people.
So he really trusts you.
He accepts me into his world, and I think that's part of this. He knows I make his life very easy. I've got a feeling our training sessions went so fast because he knew, like, hey, she's got food. Oh man, this is way better than being out in my wild where I almost died. That's putting myself in his head. I wish I could read his thoughts and know what he was thinking, but I got a feeling that's why that went as fast as it did. Again, very unusual for it to go that fast. I've heard of people going faster, but I don't know how much of that is the falconer's error. I've heard of people going faster than losing their birds because they were overconfident that their bird was connected to them. He knows that he's got shelter with me. If I keep him long enough, I've heard of falconers who, their bird, at the end of the hunt, they'll go back to the car and wait in the car waiting to go back in, because they're like, you know what, hey, this is cold, here's my free meal, let's go. They just know it's way easier with us. So that's not to say he's imprinted on me. And if everything goes well, he'll eventually go back to the wild. I mean, he definitely knows how to hunt now. I don't know to this day why he had such a poor time out in the wild. Maybe he was pushed out by some territorial hawks. Maybe there just wasn't enough food. Maybe it was bad weather, or he was sick, or maybe he just didn't have the skills to succeed. It could be a variety of reasons, combination of all of them. Who knows? I wish I knew.
Susan, can you turn him around slowly so we can see his tail feathers?
Yes.
Thank
So you can see right now, they're all red. He has dropped all of those immature feathers. He's almost done with his tail molt. He's still got his primaries, those are the main flight wings, or feathers that are coming in. And he's still molting a couple of secondaries as well. I saw a couple drop today when I went into his mews. The free loft that we built on is the three-season porch. He's got a lot of peachy colors in there too that he never had. He was like 2 colors strictly. You get more? You get more orange. He's like, there's not much on this. But yeah, he's almost done. I might be able to hunt him as early as the end of September.
What did you do with Nancy after you said it was her last,
Great question. I fattened her up for at least another week, and I tried to disassociate myself with her. I didn't go in there unless I absolutely had to. I kept her in a free loft where there's a food chute, so I pushed the food through the chute where she didn't have to see me. And then on a Sunday, I went and went out to Cheney Road on the other side of town, where it's real remote, but I thought she'd have a good chance of squirrels and other game and be away from other territorial red-tailed hawks. And I let her go. I cut off her braces, took off the hood, and that was a weird experience. Like, realizing I had no control over her, and she just sat on my fist. I have a video of it, I didn't bring it because it's a long video. She just sat there, and I just soaked it up because she didn't want to leave. She was content, she was fat, she was happy. She was like, ah. And then finally she looked around, saw a tree, went up in the tree. I got back in the car, and I don't know if it was my mommy hormones from, you know, being a month away from having Silas, or a combination. I didn't think it was attached to her, because I knew I was going to release her, but I bawled. Then we went to the North Ski Canasio, and as soon as I walked in, I saw my sponsor. And upon seeing him, I was just a whole other level of tears again. He came in and hugged me, and he knew. He's like, you released your bird, didn't you? I didn't tell him. I'm like, yeah. Never thought I'd get it. It's the falconer that gets connected in that way. The bird doesn't.
How long is too long to keep it?
You know, there's not. There's some birds who keep them for a long time. They can live to like 30 years. So some people decide, I want to keep my bird. My sponsor kept his first male for 11 years before I said, you know what? It's time for both of us. It really depends. He had one bird who was just super footy and grasping no matter what he did. That female just knew that if it footed, it's going to poop. Ready? And you know they've got different words for poop in falconry? It's like a whole poetic jargon. So he's thinking, usually that's a sign that he was looking up. He's thinking about looking around. He's looking at a perch. He's like, you know what, I'm fat. I want to roost. He knows it's nighttime. He knows. So he might try to bait here, and if that's the case, I'll let him do that, and then I'll go with him. That's great. But yeah, they've got different words for poop. If a bird poops straight down, they call that a mute. If it cuts across about halfway on your mother-in-law's carpet, that's called a slice. He's thinking to be proactive. He's not going anywhere if he does. I've got him well secured here. I'm just going to try to put him here. Take advantage of this distraction. Yeah. He's thinking about it. Let that rest before I strike the braces. It might be a conflict thing. I never try to strike the braces unless I have to. That's more of a me thing. Maybe not a good falconer tactic, but he can see a little bit out of this. That's why he's kind of picking. I'm not worried about his beak at all. Again, it's not super strong. See that right there? That's how full he is. He can't contain all that food. And that's, my first bird didn't do that, like, and I will clean this up, I promise. Yeah. That's how full he is. That's a good sign to me. That's comforting to me. I know he got as much as he can possibly handle.
Is there a mate with another bird in the lab?
He hasn't, and that's probably because he hasn't reached sexual maturity just yet. Usually takes about 2 to 3 years for for them to get to that level. Every now and then I do hear about falconers whose birds, even wild-caught birds, will, especially the females, will display, they'll present their feathers. Sometimes they'll even go out there and find a pig. Very unusual. I never got to that point with Nancy, and that's not to say that that's going to be your case with every bird you deal with.
How did you first get interested in this?
You said like,
No, I didn't say I'm strike. It's not a clear strike. My husband told me one day that he's like, you're not going to believe this. I'm sitting next to the president of the Wisconsin Falconers Association. And I said, wow, I don't know what that means, but that sounds really cool. My husband knew that I liked birds, and he thought I would find it interesting. So I found this guy at the Christmas party for the work, and I pulled him aside, and I probably scared him with how many questions I asked. I was really enamored with what he did. He said he had a goshawk, and he finally said, have you ever interested in coming out? I'm like, really? So I went out with him all that winter as much as I could to go on hunts, and I saw what it was like. And I never thought I'd get into it. I heard about what was involved, and it's a lot. I mean, you can see it's a lifestyle. They're not pets, but if you want to do well, you have to give it your best. And not necessarily your all. I'm not going to be one of those people, but it takes your dedication. You got to be somebody who pays attention to details. You have to be knowledgeable. You have to be able to read the bird. You have to be able to be teachable, be humble, because you make mistakes, and you'll see, like, even me, in this presentation, I make mistakes. A little kitty wampus, he'll wiggle around that hood, because it's a little wiggly, but he'll get that the way he wants it. So after all that time, I'm a marathoner, and I was training for an ultra marathon when I broke my foot on a trail. So that kind of laid me up, and I went to the North Shore with him. He had just trapped a Crest Passage peregrine falcon in his barn of all places. He let me sit next to that bird in the wide open all the way up to the North Shore at Two Harbors, Minnesota, for how many hours that is. And I sat next to this bird the entire way, and I just got to be like, wow. And on the way back, and I got to do the same thing, how that whole experience trapping birds. And I came back and I told one of my coworkers about it, and she said, how is it, I explained this, she's like, so when are you going to get to the sport? And I told her all the reasons I could not. And then I got home and I'm thinking, I'm telling her all the reasons I can't, I got to make this differently. How can I do it? So I started to look at that and I'm like, you know what, this might be doable, but I need help. So I sat down that night, I sat in my husband's lap and I said, honey, I got a serious question to ask you. He knows I'm only doing that on some serious occasions, like, you want to have a baby? And I said, no. I think I want to get into falconry, but I need your help. And with his help, building facilities, being willing to just be my support man, I was able to get involved. So the next year, I got in. And that same gentleman who I talked about at that Christmas party, he was my sponsor. Super awesome guy. We still connect, talk on a weekly basis. I don't know where I'd be without him. He's a master falconer, been doing it for almost 30 years. I hope to be like that someday. All right. Well, you guys, thank you very much for coming. I'll let you go.